All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good afternoon, Berger. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studios in Fairfax City. We're very happy and grateful that Jo Berger Myhre accepted the invitation to our show. Jo Berger, welcome till Jovet. I hope
Thank
I
you
did
so much.
hope I
Yeah,
wasn't that bad.
well done. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, and pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. So let's go back to the beginning of last year. We are living in crazy time with the COVID, the pandemic. People cannot go out that much. Touring musicians like yourself cannot tour. Some people believe in the vaccine, some people don't believe in the vaccine. And, I'm a consumer of your music. So, if the venues are closed, right, you don't get paid and I cannot see shows. So it's an incentive for both to get vaccinated and so forth. So how you manage during this crazy year and a half, and how you holding up, and how's it affected your family, your ability to tour, to travel that much? How is this affecting you?
Yeah, obviously, it came as a shock, in the beginning of March last year when the government announced the lockdown, and pretty much my whole calendar was wiped out in 2 days. But then at the same time, I realized that, okay, this is a grave situation, and I'm living in a social democracy in Scandinavia, which is a pretty safe place. So I kind of had a feeling straight away that there would be some kind of security system kicking in. And it did. Like the government had some funding for businesses that I could apply for after a little while. But so in that sense, it's of course I had a lower income and everything, but it was okay. I mean, I was never on the verge of going bankrupt or anything like that. It was just the whole life situation basically changed from all my traveling plans, all my concerts, the rest of that year were just wiped out. But then again, I found myself with a lot of time in my own little studio, and I had the time to finish this album that I just released, and spent some proper time making that as good as I wanted. So in that case, it was pretty good, and I also found a better balance between the workload and the family life, because I live here with my wife and 2 kids, and their school it closed, so I just had to stay home for a couple of months being their teacher. And that was a different experience, but I kind of just realized that, okay, now I'm doing this and it will be like this for a while, and I probably just have to try to benefit from and have a good time, in the sense that things are moving a bit slower now, and that's a pace that I enjoy. So I just try to look at it like that, and I figured that, okay, the minute everything goes back to the way it used to be, it's probably going to be crazy again because everybody wants to catch up. So I try to keep that in mind all the time.
Sure, sure. You speak very, very good English. It's mandatory for people to learn the language, or is it
Yeah,
when
you
you
learn
are
it.
in elementary school or middle school?
Yeah, I think my youngest, she's in third grade, and she just started English. So I believe it was like that for me also, that you start learning English pretty early on in school at 8 or 9. And then obviously you hear English all the time on TV and radio, through music, TV series and everything. And then on top of that, my grandmother was English. So I kind of
Oh,
grew up with that language a little bit around the house
yeah,
when I was
it's
a
good.
kid. Mm.
Yeah, it's good to learn the language. I'm originally from Chile, so
Oh
my
yeah.
Spanish is my primary language, and I came to the United States to study, and I ended up staying. So, but the whole world works English, whether you're a scientist, whether you're catching an airport in Tokyo or wherever you are in the world, you can communicate in English. So it's good that people speak the language, right?
Absolutely. It helps.
The banking system, job, schooling, traveling, everything works in English, and you can communicate that well.
Mm.
And let's go back to the beginning. Were you born like as a musical family? How old were you when you began perhaps taking, guitar lesson or piano lesson at the beginning?
Yeah, I was born in Oslo,
Yeah.
capital of Norway. And when I was a kid growing up, my father was a professional guitar player. freelance guitar player and playing pop and gospel music, basically some jazz. So I grew up with a lot of guitars around the house, or the apartment that we lived in, and also a piano.
Yeah.
And then he taught me like some piano and some guitar when I was just like before I started school, and learned me, how to play the piano by ear, and also reading sheet music a little bit. But I didn't have any formal piano training as such. And when I was 7, we moved to a smaller town, a couple of hours outside of Oslo, which is called Sandefjord, which is a smaller town where I basically say that that's where I grew up, kind of, because that's where I went to school. And then, within a year I started in a school band there, which was a very popular activity. And I started playing the saxophone. I did that for a couple of years, and then somebody tricked me into switching to oboe, which is a very difficult woodwind instrument. So I played that for a few years, but then I had so much headache from playing it, so I quit. But during that transition, maybe when I was 12 or 13, I kind of randomly picked up a bass guitar in a rock band with some friends. And because of my father being a guitar player, I knew a little bit how the instrument worked. So it came pretty quickly to me to play the bass guitar, and then I just continued doing that. We did a lot of obviously grunge and Britpop cover music. That's kind of the first music that I got into myself.
Yeah.
15, I also found a double bass in my school, in the music room in my school. So I found an interest for that, and then I started playing a lot of classical double bass throughout high school. So at that point I kind of switched to playing double bass, both jazz and classical, and also a lot of bass guitar, also improvised music. And then during that years in high school I was more and more getting into experimental music and jazz and improvisation and that kind of stuff. And then I applied for the Music Academy in Oslo and was accepted there. So I started there after high school, studied music, and then one thing led to another, and then I just became a musician without thinking too much about it.
Wow.
So that's the journey.
Yeah, good for you, man. It was difficult to enter that school. You need to take like an examination, do like a...
Yeah, the Music Academy, I had to audition. Yeah. And I was 19 when I auditioned, and I learned a few jazz standards that you had to play at the audition, and I played those. I think maybe Stella by Starlight, My Favorite Things, something like that.
Famous
and then and then to my surprise they accepted me as a student. They only accept like one on each instrument every year to form a band. That's how they do it at the Music Academy in Oslo.
Oh.
So I was, I didn't have any expectations. I think that's why it went so well, because I just went there and I just played these few songs that I knew, and after a few weeks I got a letter saying that they wanted me as a student there. So then I started, and then like the real shock came, because then I've really felt when I started the academy that I kind of snuck in through the back door, because I didn't really know too much more about jazz. I knew a little theory and I knew a few songs, but then I ended up like studying with people who knew a lot about it, which was obviously good because I learned a lot, but I also felt that I was always on the back foot when it came to the jazz tradition and learning that music and everything. But again, yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but then again, I was in an environment there with like no... I didn't have anything else to do than being at the school, rehearsing, practicing, studying. So I was just playing maybe for 8 hours a day for 4 years straight during the academy and just learning a lot. So it was a very good place for me to be.
You mentioned they only accept one person for the instrument. So if 3 great drummers they show up for the audition, they will take only one. What the other 2 kids could do? There are other academies or other universities where they can study music?
Yeah, there are other opportunities also. There is a very good
Yeah,
school in Trondheim,
yeah,
and in
Trondheim, yeah.
yeah, yeah, a lot of students go there, and also in Bergen on the west coast, and a few other places around the country. But I think it might have changed now because this was in 2003. I applied for this school, and at the time it was Trondheim and Oslo that was kind of the prestigious schools to enter. But now I think it might have changed a little bit, and I think other schools around the country are also provide providing really good educations, not only in jazz but also in like creative music making and yeah, you know.
And
So it's
I feel, things perhaps helps you or perhaps add more pressure that your dad being a musician too, it's helped you, but at the same time, you need you need to do well. So you happy, your dad can be happy with you, and instead of going to a different profession. And feel free to elaborate on what you told me before the interview,
oh yeah, yeah,
what your dad told you that,
yeah. I mean, my father, yeah, yeah, that's kind of funny, and also something I've been thinking about a lot after, because when I was yeah, approaching the last year of high school, and I started talking to him about actually studying music and becoming a musician. Then he told me that yeah, the one thing that you shouldn't do like I did was to get a different education, because if you have a different education also, then you will have something to fall back on, and then you will most likely fall back. So if you burn all bridges and only go for the music, then you have to make it work. That was his attitude, but not
yeah,
in a way that he was pressuring me, but more in the way that he was encouraging me. And he is
very,
also
very
very,
well. I keep on thinking, and if I think your dad is absolutely right. It's risky though, but if you have a plan B, you will fall back to plan B. Hey,
yeah. I
music,
think I
me,
think he was right about that, because yeah, he was a wonderful musician, you know, a guitar player in pop and jazz and gospel music mostly in the 80s when I was a kid.
yeah,
But he was also a social worker and enjoying that for real. And then as me and my two younger sisters grew up, he was turning more and more towards being a social worker. And after we moved from Oslo to this smaller town, he would leave his profession as a musician more and more behind, and work more as a social worker with addicts and in that field, which he also enjoys equally. So it was not like a concession for him to do that. But at the same time, he told me that, you know, if you really want to become a musician, make sure that you don't have a plan B, because it's very tempting to fall back onto that plan B.
yeah. Absolutely, man. Oh, it's amazing, amazing, and that you can do that. Here in the United States, different because you still, if music, doesn't work out or whatever, there's so many work opportunities, so many universities here that you can start as a musician and then switch or vice versa. You're doing something else and you want to give music a try. You can do that and then make a little bit of money and then decide. But then the risk is what your dad told you, right? If you are an average of doing three things, you're not going to make a good living, or you need to excel and pick one thing and be good at it. You will have a job for life, right?
Yeah, I think so, and especially those during those formative years when you are maybe between 15 and 25, when
Yeah,
your brain just learns everything that you study, if you're really into it. Then and that was also the reason when I was in studying music at Music Academy, I was very persistent on not having another job at the side, because I just wanted to focus all my attention into learning the instrument and play music, and be kind of consumed with that, which obviously meant that I didn't really have any money when I was studying, but then again I had all the time to just focus on that. Uh, so I think that was time well spent, to be honest.
really. And then during the school year, and then as you're learning and you go to second year, third year, you start getting some gigs and you start making a little bit of money because now you've been in school, and I'm quite sure many professors are approached, or many professors may have size gig and they need a student to play with them. So was there a possibility to start kind of making a little bit of money as a professional musician at the time?
Yeah, this happened a little bit, you know, and then the education I took was 4 years, And during the third year, I went on an exchange program to Gothenburg in Sweden, kind of just to get away a little bit from having more and more gigs, because I just needed to have more time just focusing on my instrument and not rehearsing with bands all the time. So I went to Gothenburg for 1 year and studied with Anders Jurmin, bass player there, a Swedish, really, really good double bass player. And I had him as a teacher for a year, and then I came back to Oslo for the final year. And during that final year, then I started to get more like professional gigs in Oslo, and I started playing with a singer called Solveig Slettahjell, who was very big in the jazz scene in Norway at the time, and also around Germany. So then, after a month back in Norway, I was all of a sudden on a long European tour with her, and then kind of things were just taking off from there pretty quickly. But all of that came through studying at the music academy, because the other people in the band, as you say, they were teachers at the school who heard me play, and fellow students, and so it was morphing kind of from going from studying to becoming a professional musician. It was a kind of smooth transition for me.
Yeah, here in the United States, there are two big schools. One is in New York, the Juilliard School of Music.
Sure.
And the other one, the very famous one, is in Boston, the Berklee School of Music.
Of course, yeah.
Or great people I interview either have been teachers there or they study there. It's a kind of all the kids try to go to Berklee. This kind of famous. In my case, I don't know how to read music. I don't play any instrument, but I've been listening music for many, many years. Since I was a baby, literally a baby.
Yeah,
my dad had a lot of music growing up, similar to your dad, but my dad was an engineer and he got a lot of music. So I began listening music when they brought me back from the hospital. And then about 14 years old, I discovered kind of rock and roll and jazz rock and Led Zeppelin at the time, or Pink Floyd or Genesis.
Sure.
And the rest is history. Then I came here to the United States and began collecting music and listening. So music has given me a lot of satisfaction. And during the pandemic, sorry?
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. That's why we do it.
Yeah, and during the pandemic, I put this first radio together, did well. Then I opened a second one. Then I opened a third one. I began doing interviews, and I'm very happy. Talking to great musicians like yourself. So when you were, let's say, in that university, what kind of music were you listening? Were you people or what people were recommended at school for you to listen, or what were you listening on your own at the time?
I kind of had a double musical life in a way when I was in the music academy, because I was studying jazz and improvised music. So I got fed a lot of historical jazz music through that, and we did these projects. 1 week we did music by Mingus, and another week we did music by Monk. So it was kind of focused like that. But at the same time, I also had a band with people I knew from before who was not studying at the music academy, and we were playing instrumental rock music, post rock and noise music and stuff like that. So I was doing that at the same time. So when I was in the academy, I was playing the double bass and studying jazz. And when I was playing with my friends, I was playing the bass guitar and making kind of noisier music at the same time. So I was playing with educated people, people deeply into music theory and stuff like that. But at the same time, trying to keep my friendship with all these indie musicians and unschooled musicians. And I think there's a lot to learn from both approaches. And I think this mix has taken me to where I am today, aesthetically also. But I know a lot of theory, and I'm schooled in music, but at the same time I try to keep my intuition very alert, and when I make music I trust what I hear and not what I know.
Well, that's pretty good. Oh, very well put to say that. Like we talked before we began recording the interview, I told you I have the opportunity to interview several of the people that you have played with, like Ingrid Olava and Peter
Yeah,
Nils
yeah.
here, and so they were, and it's amazing. I'm so amazed every time that I keep on discovering people, one another after another after another. I say, what's different in that country? I try hard to interview people from, let's say, Sweden or Finland, right next to you, and maybe perhaps the quality is not there, or perhaps there are not any. What Norway is doing different? That there are so many. I'm serious. Out of the 120 interviews I've done, at least 20 came from Norway, and then I
Oh,
have
really?
3 next week and 3 the week after. It's amazing the amount of, there's so many good musicians in Norway. What Norway is doing differently that, it's
Oh, I
what
don't
is so
know.
good.
I don't know how they do it in Sweden or Finland or wherever else in Europe, but I think what's happening in Norway is that music is pretty accessible. Playing an instrument is pretty accessible from a young age. For me, it was through the school band, and also through attending choirs. All of these activities, they are very low cost and everybody can join them. So access to an instrument it's pretty simple actually. And then obviously you had the education system that is more or less free. So if you want to study music, you can do that without having to pay a lot of money. And then on top of that, when you're done studying music, then we have a cultural policy, a politics for culture and music, which is pretty active, from the state. So it doesn't mean that everybody gets all the money they need to do every project, but it means that it's possible when you have a project to get it partly funded by the state to some degree. And I didn't get that a lot in the beginning, but through the years when I was just persistent and doing more and more music and building my CV and playing a lot and having more and more projects that were thought through, I've started getting some fundings to actually do my projects. And then at the same time you see a lot of people who are actually able to make a living from music, and I think that's also encouraging for young musicians. You can grow up and you can play music and you can see that it's actually possible to make a living from it. And I think that's just a positive self-generating spiral kind of that it's exciting to take place in. And as I said, I don't know if they do it differently in other countries, but I think these factors are very important in Norway. So, and I think that's as a result of that, you meet a lot of Norwegian musicians through your interview series.
Yeah. And then kids are between the equivalent of high school here in the United States, that between 15 and 18. Do in general, of course, we cannot extrapolate perhaps, but do kids do a lot of stupid stuff, like do drugs or leave high school, or it's easy to fall out of the system than there, like it is here, or
Yeah, I guess people drop out of high school here too. Um, but the high school system is built in a way that when you apply for a high school, you can apply for a very specific direction. I went to a music high school that had a lot of musical subjects because I was interested in that, and you have that kind of branches for a lot of different subjects. So if you have already an interest, when you're 15, then you can apply for a or for a high school that goes in that direction. But you can also do a more like traditional, basic education that prepares you for whatever you might want to study later at the university or something. But so far, my kids, they are too young to go to high school, so I don't really know too much about the dropout rates or anything like that.
yeah, yeah,
But in general, the social security net in Norway is pretty strong, which I think is a good thing.
yeah. And the fact that you get a little bit of money, you were getting a little bit of money during the COVID because you were making a living as a musician and you cannot tour. It's not your
Yeah.
fault. It's, they give you, and those fans you need to pay them back, or no, or free. No,
No, it was like
not a loan. Yeah,
yeah, no, it's not a loan. It's as a replacement for income, kind of. But you didn't get all your income. I got, I think, something like between 60 and 80% of what I usually, or what I earned the year before. But then if I earned any money myself, I had to deduct it. So it was a little bit lower than what I was used to, but it was enough to keep, so I didn't have really to worry about it.
And then when the idea for you to eventually COVID will disappear, or whatever, you are an engineer and your company, the factory closed down and you move back, then the government will, then you start taking taxes again. So they help you for a while, and then eventually they want to get, taxes back.
Yeah, I think everybody just wants to work instead of just sitting passively and receiving money from the state. That's doesn't really
Well,
feel too
believe it or
good.
not, some people here in the United States, they don't.
Yeah,
they
I
they
mean,
prefer.
for my that was one thing during COVID, that what I was struggling most with was my kind of identity as a musician that was kind of vanishing a little bit, because I was used to going around playing music, doing stuff that I'm good at and that I enjoy doing, and all of a sudden I didn't do that so much, and that was the most difficult thing for me, and I think for a lot of musicians, that being a musician, you're so linked up to your profession, and who you are and what you do is very much it's interfering a lot. And when all of a sudden you are not allowed even for a few months, at least here, to do your job, then you kind of start thinking about, okay, who am I really, and what do I do if I can't go back to doing music, and it's kind
But
of thought-provoking. Yeah,
yeah,
thought-provoking.
and of course, although that your dad told you when you were 18, well, don't have a plan B,
Yeah.
concentrate in one. Well, during the
Yeah.
COVID, right, you were at home making less money. Man, I cannot play. I can play my instrument in the living room in my house or the basement of your house. I cannot play with a machine. Well, should I go back to school? You have
Yeah, yeah,
thought
yeah.
about, man, maybe I should pick a different profession. I'm still young and I have kids. I need to put money on the table for them. Maybe you thought about the plan B, or?
No, not really, because luckily nobody knew how long time it would take, to get back to more or less normal state. Because everybody just thought, okay, well, it would last a couple of months. Nobody said that, no, this will last 2 years. If I knew that from the beginning, then I would probably think a bit more in those terms, as you say. But because I didn't really know how long it would take, it was easier to just keep going. And luckily, I had a lot of projects in my studio and recording on other people's albums. So I'm one of those musicians who don't exclusively live from playing concerts. I do a lot of studio work also, so I could focus more on that. And that had been that's something I've been thinking about for a while during the last years, as my kid had been growing up. How can I make a living as a musician without having to travel all the time, as I used to. And now I tried to see COVID as an opportunity to really try that out without having to say no to a lot of gigs because there were no gigs coming along. Then I
Yeah.
could just focusing on the studio work and see how much work I could do from my hometown. And also what kept me sane is that I have my own little studio that I can ride my bike for 10-15 minutes and I'm in my studio, and I can go there to work. I have a physical workplace outside of my home. So that really helped also, so where I keep all my instruments and I have a recording setup, and so it helped me like make my album also.
And,
I had
and
the
then
time to do it.
besides your music, you would like to perhaps explore the managerial side and become like a producer, or people that don't have, a studio will come to you to help them with the mixing and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Is
little bit more and more now actually. After I released this album, I had a couple of recording and mixing sessions for other people in my studio, which I really enjoy. So that's one of my hopes, is that I can do that a little bit more. Like so now I'm mixing an album for another trumpet player, and I was just recording another album that I will mix in December for some other people. And I also, yeah, during the pandemic I also spent a lot of time producing Nils Petter Molvær's latest album in my studio. So I was So I have a setup now that I feel confident with that, and I can actually do some proper production for other people also, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, that way you wouldn't have to travel all the time and make money just being in the studio if you go to studio every day anyway. So why not try to figure out how to do it? I was looking for the people that you have played with, many Ingrid and Nils Petter and many other people I have interviewed, and it's amazing. I know you feel free to elaborate in how your acoustic trio, Splashgirl, came about, and then you wire trio. It was more different from the piece that you play. It was acoustic, a little bit electro-acoustic, and how the project came together. How many years were you as a Splashgirl?
Yeah,
Feel free to
yeah,
elaborate.
this band is with two of my best friends since high school actually. So we've been playing together since the year 2000. But this band started, I think our first album as a band was released in 2007. And it's been the most important band for me in many ways, because it's been the place where I've been developing the way to play the bass that I do. And we just have a very good relationship between us as friends and also as musicians. And this has always been like the hub where we try to explore our own way of playing together and developing an interplay and the music that feels very unique to us. And it has led us to releasing 6 albums and touring a lot. The last few years we haven't done so much because all of us had a lot of kids all of a sudden. But now in a couple of weeks we are recording a new album, so I hope that we can pick up the band a bit more from next year or the year after. This is an acoustic trio with double bass, piano and drums, but we also have been using a lot of electronic treatment of the acoustic instruments and kind of expanding our sound. But at the core of the music is just this classic piano trio setup. But quite early on we tried to deviate a little bit from that the classical sound of a band like that, because we wanted to make something else. How can I say, the way we tried to do that was to try to get away from the piano being the front and the bass and the drums being in the back, and trying to make a more democratic sound in a way. And also treat it more as a band than as a piano player with a comp bit behind it. And then we've been also at a lot of points up through the years. We've been inviting collaborators to interfere with our band, both the producers and other musicians, and that has really helped us getting new ideas into what we do, and we hope that we haven't stranded on anything, even though we have kind of established a very specific sound for the band. We're constantly trying to find ways to take new turns and go in new directions with the music.
So you guys were touring and you were together for that many years, and still together. Where were you playing? In just Norway or others here?
Yeah, mostly around Europe.
Yeah.
And then we've been to Japan, I think 4 times
Oh,
to do tours. Yeah. And then we was in the United States once. We went to, this was in 2012, we went to Seattle to record with our producer there called Randall Dunn. And then we also did the concert while we were there in Seattle. But yeah, that was the only time we went to the States so far. And now, at the moment, it's just such a hassle to get work permits and to make concerts happen in the US. So we haven't really bothered to do it anymore. But we
very
have great.
expensive, right? To get like a
It's
working visa.
it's very, very expensive, and it doesn't really pay off when you think about how poorly paid the gigs there are. And so, but we haven't really tried either to kind of make anything happen there. But our collaboration with the Randall Dunn, he's American producer, it's been really good, and we went there, as I said, once to record with him, and then we've been recording with him also in Iceland once. And now when we record our next album, it's going to be pretty special because he was supposed to come to Norway now to record with us, but at the moment it's very difficult for American citizens to enter Norway because of COVID. So we're actually going to do it in a remote fashion, that we will be in a studio here in Norway as planned, and he will be in his studio together with Robert Eike or Aubrey Love, who is a musician who was supposed to be on the album, and they will be in New York at their studio, and we will be in Norway, and we will be working at the same time, but kind of on shifts, because in Norway we are 6 hours ahead, so we will work during the daytime and we will send them music. They will work while we sleep and send some stuff back, and then we will try to make an album in that fashion. So it's going to be...
Wow. Why that particular producer or engineer in particular? You couldn't find the equivalent of in your country? Or?
No, it's we actually got in touch with him after we recorded our second album for Hubro, because at the time we were very inspired by an American band called Earth, which is a drone rock band from Seattle. And we really liked that band, and we found out that Randall had produced that band and mixed their albums, and so we sent him the music or our recordings, and we asked if he wanted to mix it for us, because we wanted that sound to our music. And then he did that, and it worked out really well, and then we decided to continue the collaboration with him as a producer, also being physically present, you know. Record and mix and produce with us. So we did that, and it worked really well. So it was just because he had produced some music that I really liked, and our label manager, he encouraged us to just reach out to him and ask if he wanted to work with us, and it became a very fruitful collaboration.
Good for you, man. Yeah, as you can see, my interviews are a little different. I know the hits, right? If you interview Peter Gabriel, all of them ask the same question. What about this hit? What about that hit? Well, everybody knows. For me, my style of interviewing, one that I'm not a professional in this stuff, because I like it, but two, I want to know the person behind it, right? Just the gig, but you know, who you play, where you will play, you know, why you picked that instrument or what city, and my interviews are more on the personal level, if you will, you know, and so they're different. And so you guys are working on a new album, and hopefully touring as a trio, perhaps next year or the year after.
Yeah, something like that. We're hoping to release it already next spring, but at the moment, you know, turnaround times for vinyl production it's very long, so it might not be able to release it until next fall, I guess. So I think that's more realistic, but next year or the year after for sure.
Yeah, a lot of musicians have mentioned the same thing here in the United States. To all this factory where the vinyl is processed and produced, they're kind of went out of business, and it's hard to get people back, and it's hard to turn the machines on again, and then there's the backlog is several months, you know.
Yeah, it's difficult. I have another album that is coming out in January with a couple of other musicians here, and I just spoke to the label today about the vinyl production, and they say that it will probably take 8 or 9 months to press the record, which is huge. And it just escalated so quickly because my last album that came out in September, it took, I think, 3 months. We sent it to press in May, and it was ready in August, and now the delivery times are 3 times the three. Yeah.
Do you have a big music collection at home? CD,
yeah, sure.
vinyl? Or you have?
I do.
Yeah.
I listen to music all the time, pretty much, since I was a kid. You know, at the moment it's a bit less because I live with 3 other people, so we keep it a bit more quiet at times. But especially when I was in high school, secondary school, high school, music academy, I think every waking minute when I was not doing something else, I was just listening to music, and a lot of different music all the time. I don't really separate between genres. I like so many different things, so I just try to find the stuff I like about different
we are very similar in many ways. Yeah, for me, I have I don't know, like a 4,000 CDs and 3,000 vinyl or more. And I listen to, you know, I'm an engineer during the day, so it's hard for me to listen to music at work, but I get consumed by music and I'm very lucky because here where I live, there's many venues, musical venues, and then many bands come this way, or every band comes this way to either play in DC or play in Maryland or play in Virginia. So I'm very lucky to be living in this part of the world. And if you were, let's say, you have a big musical show, if you were to go into the, you know, retreats or go on vacation with your wife and your kids, and you can pick only 3 vinyl or 3 CDs.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what will be those?
Oh, that's difficult
Only
to say,
3.
but I think only 3. I think if I just have to shout immediately, I think Revolver by the Beatles, and I think maybe Ballads by John Coltrane Quartet, and maybe some James Taylor record or something. Like yeah, just keep it a bit easy going.
Yeah, bit from Norway. Do you like High as a Kite, for example? It's popular for
sure.
you guys? Huh?
It's one of Norway's most popular bands at the moment. It's been for a few years. I haven't heard them in a long while, but a few years ago when I listened to them last time, I really enjoyed it. But I haven't heard their new music.
Yeah, they're releasing. I have the opportunity to interview them, and they're in the process of releasing, and they're going to be obviously touring next year, and they're great. I mean, for me, feel free to elaborate on your collaboration with Ingrid Lava, how you met her, you know, which record were you involved, what was your, you know, involvement with playing.
Yeah, I met her.
She's a very nice person, by the way. You know, she's a very nice.
She's really sweet. I met her in, I think, 2007, just as I was finishing the music academy, actually. Then she called me and said that she needed a bass player for her first album, her debut album. And she got to me through a guy called Morten Qvenild, who was the piano player with Solveig Slettahjell, and who's been kind of a very important musician and friend to me, introducing me to the music scene and bringing me around quite a lot. So Morten suggested Ingrid that I should be in her band, and then I was on her first 2 albums and playing a lot of concerts for a few years. But now I haven't played with her for a few years. I think I stopped around 2013. But there were maybe 6 or 7 years where we played really, really a lot together with her and a drummer called Erland Dalen, who I think also you should probably talk to at some point. He's a fantastic drummer.
What's the name? Say that again, the name? Yeah.
Erland Dalen, he plays the drums also with Nils Petter Molvær together with me, and also with Eivind Aarseth and a lot of different bands.
Interview him as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you should get him on the phone. He's funny and a great guy. So that was with Ingrid for a few years there, and a couple of albums and touring, mostly in Scandinavia, but also a little bit in the UK.
It's a good. I have a good vibe with her on the interview. She's a very good person, and as you know, everybody, a lot of musicians. Well, some of them, especially for Norway, and you know, some of them just want to just sing in Norwegian, right? But the majority will sing in English because singing in English will open more doors for them. And
of course,
Ingrid has a very unique voice. She's very good. Yeah. I keep on saying the same thing again. I was saying it 100 years from now. There's so many great musicians come on Norway. It's amazing. I need to move there. Move the family.
Yeah.
I've never been there, actually. Never been in Norway. I would like to.
You should definitely come visit when you have the opportunity. It's
probably during the summer, not the winter.
Yeah, summer it's very nice, but winter is something else. You know, if you're into snow and northern lights and cold days, which can also be very nice, then it has everything. You know,
it has everything. Yeah.
Very, very different.
From and man, the language is very difficult, man. some words I have no idea how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
But everybody speaks English, so I'm lazy in that way. And then you began playing after that, after English, with Nils Petter Molvær. The guy is genius. He's amazing. You know, everybody always that knows jazz know the album came here, but
Of course, yeah.
but he has done a lot more stuff before and a lot of stuff after. Are you still involved with him, or you playing the last? He released a new album, Stitches, I think 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah,
Very good album.
I was very involved with
Yeah.
that album actually. I wrote a few of the songs and I also produced the album and also played the bass. So I've been
My
working very
God.
closely with him for the last few years. On the two last albums, I did a lot of work with him, and I'm still in his live band. So we've been around a little bit this fall around Europe, and we're going now next few weeks also to I think London and Paris and Germany. God willing that nothing happens with the COVID situation, but
I
hopefully.
think he lives in Norway, in Berlin, right? Is that correct?
No, he lives in Oslo.
Oh, I thought that,
Actually,
yeah.
but he travels a lot. I mean, he's always he's somewhere else. So you
Always
might have
on the
spoke.
move.
Yeah, he might have been in Berlin when you spoke to him. That
Yeah.
could be the case. Yeah, but he
Yeah.
lives there
Hopefully,
in
I
Oslo.
will. Hopefully, I will meet you guys. You know, I never seen obviously you playing or Nils Petter Molvær playing, and I'm going to be in Germany in December. Hopefully, with the COVID, I'm going flying for. Going to be there for 10 days,
Oh, yeah.
interviewing a lot of electronic music musicians there. So
Great, great.
the tour, I like his music and I like your stuff as well. And all right, I want to bring your attention for an album. You need to help me pronounce it. That is called the Hemlich Maneuver,
Yeah,
right?
perfect. Very good.
Right. And to borrow a phrase from David Lynch, Twin Peaks, a place of wonderful and strange. That's exactly what I felt. See, I listen to music in two different. I obviously I have a stereo in every floor here, but every time that I get a CD or every time I get a new vinyl, I put my headphone first. That's why I drink a beer or a wine, whatever, water, whatever, and the first time that I listen to anything is go to my headphone, and that it was took me a while. I found that album strange the first time, and then I listened to the second time, the third time, fourth time, fifth time, or I don't know. It's a very, very good album, very different, very unique,
Thank you
and
so much. I'm glad to hear that.
very good stuff, man. Very good. And I have read. Obviously, I don't care what everybody thinks about the stuff, right? I either I like it or not. I don't care if the New York Times tell me that your stuff is great, okay, me is great. I want to have an independent way of looking at the world and then through music, right? And so after I listened to your stuff 4 times, then I went to the web and said, what critics are saying about the album, and it was very well received. I mean, it was.
Yeah, yeah. I've been really happy with that.
You think that album, from your point of view, why do you think that album have done well on sale or have received a lot of good reviews from people? What do you think?
I can only hope that it's because people notice that it's a very sincere album, and it's just very honest. And it's kind of what I've been thinking about lately is that I really try to work hard, but I try not to try too hard, if that makes any sense. Work hard but not try hard. So it's something that I put a lot of effort into, and I think I've been considering every aspect of the whole album, and it's obviously very worked through, but at the same time I was trying to keep like initiative and intuition throughout. But I think hopefully people feel that it's just exactly what I wanted to do, and I'm not trying to please anybody with it. I just wanted to. This was very important to me to make this album and to make that, to share my view of the world through that music. And if people, yeah, people seem to get that, even though the music is strange at times, and that makes me really happy.
Feel free to elaborate your collaboration with Rare Noise Records. That I had the opportunity to interview Giacomo and several people from this. Giacomo has a unique view of the world. He like this type of music, whatever that means, and so his record label is this area, whatever that means, and it's very good. I have interviewed several people from that record label. How you end up meeting him, and how you end up with that record label?
Oh, I have actually never met him. I'm gonna meet him for the first time on Wednesday when I go to London.
Oh,
But
wow.
I made the album, and I made the mix that I wanted to, that I was happy with. And then I was searching for labels, so I was thinking about how to release it, and I knew about his label, and I thought that, okay, that kind of makes sense to send it to him. So I sent it to him and maybe 2 or 3 other labels, and then he responded within 24 hours or something, and was very, very excited about the music, and just very encouraging. And then I thought, okay, this is the right man to collaborate with, because his enthusiasm is so great. So
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
it just felt really good, and it felt like the perfect match for that music. Also, when I looked at what he had been releasing before, and his approach, and also his statement, about the label, what he thinks is important in music. And then as we were emailing back and forth about the music, it was kind of funny, because he would say something about the music that was spot on to some of the references I had, without me ever told him about it, about some Baroque painters, or, yeah, as you said, David Lynch, obviously, and this play between the light and darkness, all of these kind of things that he just intuitively knew that I was into with his music. So then I was just more and more convinced that it was right, and he was doing it for the sake of the music and not anything else, which
Yeah,
is obviously the best place to start for a collaboration with a
for a
record label.
collaboration. When you see him next week in London, tell him that I say hello. I have the opportunity to interview him and for the radio, and I'm going to London, I think February, and then to see some shows, and then in May, and then I will meet him. We'll have dinner with the guy. He's a very nice person. We get on.
Nice. Yeah, I might actually also go to London in May for a solo concert.
Right.
So we
Well, you
should
need to. I need to.
keep in touch
Uh,
about that. We'll see.
we can. Yeah, we can. Now that I have your email, we need to stay in touch, and we'd love to see you and meet you, and then see you with Malvier as well. It's another musician I never seen. I have seen a lot of stuff here, but not all of them, right? And if you could pick, a couple of, elaborate in general your musical influences, over the year. If you can pick, 3 or 4 people that mark you, and you say, well, I always go back to this or that. Is any
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I think my all-time favorite musician and bass player also is Paul McCartney. And I continuously listen to Beatles and his solo albums. I think that's been like the one that's been following me since I was a kid. And now also my kids are really into the Beatles, and we listen to it a lot. And I
really?
was yeah, and I was super fascinated by this series that just came out with him and Rick Rubin, where they talk about Beatles and McCartney recordings. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. And I'm also very much looking forward to the Get Back movie that Peter Jackson directed. Is coming out in later this month, I think. So Paul McCartney definitely has always been been a guiding star for me. And then obviously I had my period with Jaco Pastorius, as I think most bass players had. Mostly through high school, I was very obsessed with him, and I still listen quite a lot to, or not quite a lot, but from time to time I go back to the records with Joni Mitchell that he plays on, that I think are really strong, and I think his bass playing is that's where he is at his best.
Yeah.
I feel when he's playing in her band. I think that's fantastic. And then in the later years, as I said, I became really fascinated with the band I mentioned earlier called Earth, and also
Need to check it out.
Yeah, that was I think around 2005. They resurrected because this was a band that was kind of on the Seattle scene in the 90s, but kind of off-piste. It was not part of the grunge movement as such, but more experimental and much heavier. And then they resurrected in 2005 with some kind of doomy country twangy music. So I was really into that, and that also influenced Splashgirl a lot for some years there. But I think my latest big influence over since maybe 2015 has been Iranian music, and especially a Comanche player called Kayhan Kalhor, which I think he lives in the States actually. And when I heard him for the first time in I think 2015-16, and the way Comanche is the Iranian violin instrument that you keep on your lap and you play a bow with very loose hairs. And that inspired me a lot when I heard his sound, and I felt that, okay, I want my double bass to kind of sound a little bit in that direction. And that also on my solo album that we talked about earlier, I played the double bass with the Comanche bow that I picked up because after hearing his music I felt that I really need to learn about the classical Persian Iranian music. So I've been to Iran 3 times to study music with a teacher there. Yeah. So I went there to study with the Comanche teachers, and then I have no intention of playing the Comanche or doing Iranian music at all. But there is something about that I think seeps into my own music, especially on the latest album, and especially on the way that I play the double bass. But I'm very reluctant to make the influence too obvious, but it's definitely there, combined with so much else, and then I think maybe new things can happen. But Kayhan Kalhor definitely is a superb musician, and his touch and his sound has been very inspiring to me over the last few years.
Pandethini, you mentioned Jaco Pastorius. Pandethini, I never had the opportunity to interview him, but he said that there would never be another Jaco in the next 100 years. The guy was like the Michael Jordan in basketball, right?
Yeah.
That people that come every 100 years, you know.
But I mean, for a musician with that much integrity and that strong signature on the sound, it doesn't make sense for anybody else to try to play like that, because it will always sound like a cliche or a copy or a pastiche. You know, if you try to copy or to do the same thing as someone that iconic, then I think you're not going to go anywhere. You're always going to be just a reference in history. So, and to me that doesn't really make any sense as a musician, but I really love listening to his music. But I couldn't care less about anybody trying to sound like him. You know, it doesn't make any sense to me, at least.
Guys, way up there, man. I have only a couple of questions left. So what are your plans for you coming up, you know, next month and in December, if you have any cliques, or what are the plans for the next 6 months or something like that?
Yeah, actually next week, as I said, I'm going to London with Nils Petter to play at the jazz festival there. I think we're playing at Ronnie Scott's, you know, the jazz club in downtown Soho area.
Yeah.
And then I'm going back to Oslo, and I'm finally playing a release concert for my own solo album here in
Yeah.
Oslo next Friday. And then I invited three of the musicians from the album to play with me. So I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm spending a lot of time preparing that at the moment.
Yeah.
And then later this month we're also going back to Europe for another few gigs with Nils Petter Molvær. And then I'm going into the studio with Splashgirl the first week of December, recording a new album.
Good for
And then
you.
we're also playing a concert in Stockholm, like one of those COVID concerts that has been postponed a few times, but now it looks like it's finally gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to play a concert with Splashgirl again. It's been a long while, but going there to Stockholm, and then I have a couple of mixing sessions in my studio in December. So yeah, next year I think it's also gonna be a lot of concerts with Nils Petter, and I'm releasing a new album with Thomas Strøen, a drummer here, and a fiddle player, like folk musician called Erlend Viken. It's on Jazzland recordings, coming out in the winter.
Yeah.
So and then I'm also composing music for a theater piece here next spring. So it's a mix of doing my own music and these collaborations that I treasure so much. That always kind of, I feel, moves my thoughts forward, and I'm very interested in that. Not stagnate or get too locked in anything, but always finding new ways of making the music going forward. I think that's important.
Good for you, man. Feel free to mention your website or your Bandcamp or where
Oh yeah,
our listeners can buy your music, and I want them to buy it.
yeah. Actually, I haven't put up a website yet, but I have my web address is just my full name, and then you can press .com or .no,
Yeah.
and that will take you actually to my Bandcamp site where you can get access to my latest album. So it's all linked together there.
We
But
put
I
in
have a
the link when I
yeah,
post the interview. I will post the link for your Bandcamp so people can buy your music.
great. I've had the intention to put up a website for years, but I never find the time because there is always work with music instead. So I can't really be bothered to spend time making a proper website. But maybe one day, or
Maybe
maybe
one day
somebody
that.
can help me with it. Yeah,
Yeah. No, if with your first name and last name, people can get a hold of you somewhere in the world and go into the Bandcamp that most musicians use to sell music, and could be great. Man, it was very nice talking to you again, man. Hopefully
likewise.
we can meet somewhere in London, or I need to go to Oslo.
Definitely.
For the reason I said before, I need to visit that school of music and visit the country, because I'm an engineer, so I'm always thinking about facts, and it's hard for why don't many, it's not an accident that many basketball players come from one city, or why they're, the most intelligent people come from one particular country, or whatever.
Yeah.
I need to always think through and look for abnormality. So I've been fascinated by Norway, and the amount of musician, the great musician that they're coming out of the country. So I need to visit the country, because it's not an accident. Accident doesn't happen. It gotta be many reasons, like you mentioned. That the reason that there are so many good composer, musician, and coming out of the country. So it was very nice talking to you. Hopefully we'll meet somewhere, or in London, or in Norway, or whatever, and have
I
dinner
hope so.
here. Or
Definitely, that would be a pleasure.
okay, thank
Hope
you
to
very
see
much.
you
Appreciate it,
someday.
man. Okay,
Thank you,
take it
Tyler.
easy. No
Take
problem.
care.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, bye.